How does a woman who ruled the screen for decades leave behind a story that still feels unfinished? Nora Aunor wasn't just a star. She was a cultural force, a name that carried weight in every corner of Philippine entertainment. But after her passing, a different kind of spotlight appeared. Not on her films, not on her awards, but on her money. Some reports claim she left behind a fortune built over a lifetime of box office hits, sold-out shows, and global recognition. Others whisper a very different story, one filled with missing numbers, unanswered questions, and online claims that don't quite line up. And in the middle of it all sits a mystery that fans still debate to this day. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories like this. We're always digging into the facts, the rumors, and everything in between. Because what comes next might change how you see her legacy entirely. The story has to start where no one expected it to. Long before the red carpets, the international awards, and the sold-out theaters, Nora Aunor's life was shaped by simplicity, struggle, and a voice that stood out in a crowded world. She rose during a time when breaking into the entertainment industry meant competing against established names and powerful studios. But film by film, song by song, she carved out a reputation that turned her into a box office draw.
Malaan, pinagmimilagruhan. And so, si Hilkito ako, nagsimula kaming maglilibot.
Producers didn't just cast her for talent, they cast her because her name alone could fill seats. As her popularity exploded, so did the business around her. Movies, recording deals, television appearances, and live performances stacked up, creating multiple streams of income that few in her era could match. Endorsements followed, and with them came a level of financial influence that pushed her beyond being just an actress and into becoming a brand. But while the numbers on paper kept rising, the pressure behind the scenes grew just as fast. And as the spotlight got brighter, it also made every success and every setback impossible to hide. And that's where the real questions about her fortune begin to take shape. Because once Nora Aunor's name became a symbol of success, people started attaching numbers to it. Online estimates and entertainment trackers began placing her wealth in the multi-million-dollar range, pointing to decades of earnings from films, albums, international projects, and long-running royalties tied to her most iconic work. On paper, the picture looks impressive. A career that spanned generations doesn't just produce paychecks, it creates assets. Music rights that keep paying long after the final note fades. Film credits that continue to generate income through re-releases, broadcasts, and overseas distribution. Even her name itself carried commercial value, opening doors to appearances and projects well into the later years of her life. But here's where things start to get complicated. Net worth doesn't mean a vault full of cash waiting to be counted. It's a mix of property, contracts, intellectual rights, and long-term deals that can rise and fall in value. Some of it is liquid. Some of it is locked away in agreements most fans never see. And when those details stay private, it leaves space for speculation to grow, and for a very different story to take over online. Because the next chapter isn't about official estimates at all. It starts in a much less formal place. Social media. Not long after discussions about Nora Aunor's wealth began circulating, a handful of viral posts claimed something completely different. Instead of millions, they suggested she left behind almost nothing. A number so small it shocked even casual fans. Screenshots spread across comment sections, fan groups, and video threads, often without any source attached. But when people started digging, the trail went cold. No financial records, no legal documents, no statements from family members or estate representatives. Just recycled captions and reposted graphics. each one slightly changing the story but keeping the same dramatic punch. That didn't stop the narrative from growing. In fact, the lack of confirmation seemed to fuel it. For some, the mystery itself became more compelling than the truth. And as these rumors gained traction, they began to reshape how parts of the public viewed her final years, not as the closing chapter of a powerful career, but as something far more uncertain. But to understand why these stories found such a strong audience, you have to look at what was happening behind the scenes before they ever appeared. When a new kind of question took center stage, not about what she earned, but about what remained. Almost immediately, conversation shifted from her career to her estate. Who would inherit it? How much was there really? And why wasn't anything being confirmed? Public records offered very little. No widely released will, no official breakdown of assets, no formal statements laying out what was passed on or to whom. For many fans, that silence felt strange, especially given how public her life had been for so long. But legally, estates don't have to be transparent, even when the person involved was a global figure. In the Philippines, inheritance laws typically guide how assets move to heirs when no public will is presented. That process happens quietly, through legal channels, far from headlines and comment sections. Still, the lack of visible updates left a vacuum that online theories rushed to fill. Some claimed the estate was tied up in court. Others suggested family disagreements behind closed doors. None of these stories came with documentation, only secondhand accounts and speculative threads. And as each new theory spread, it blurred the line between what was actually happening and what people simply wanted to believe. Which brings up an even bigger question. What if some of her wealth was never meant to be seen at all? That idea sparked a wave of online chatter about hidden assets, quiet investments, and properties that supposedly existed far from the public eye. Fans began trading theories about overseas accounts, undisclosed real estate, and business interests that were never formally linked to her name. Some pointed to her international work and connections abroad as proof that there had to be more beneath the surface. Others claimed friends or insiders had hinted at deals that never made headlines. But when pressed for sources, the stories almost always circled back to the same place: hearsay. No records, no legal filings, no confirmed statements from anyone directly involved. Still, the mystery had a powerful pull. The idea that a superstar might have quietly secured a hidden legacy fit perfectly into the larger narrative of unanswered questions. It gave people something to search for, something to debate, something to keep alive in comment sections long after official reports had gone silent. But not all rumors pointed towards secret fortunes. A different set of claims painted a much darker picture, suggesting that her final years were marked by struggle rather than security. And that contrast between hidden wealth and financial hardship is where the story takes one of its sharpest turns. While some fans imagined undiscovered assets waiting in the background, others shared posts suggesting Nora Aunor's later years were defined by financial strain. Stories began circulating about scaled-down living, fewer public appearances, and a quieter lifestyle that some interpreted as a sign of dwindling resources. Photos of modest settings and smaller gatherings were held up as evidence, even though none of it came with context about personal choice, health, or privacy. In an age where every image gets analyzed, simplicity can quickly be turned into a narrative of struggle. There were also claims that ongoing expenses, medical care, legal matters, and maintaining a career in an evolving industry had slowly chipped away at what she once earned. Again, these ideas spread without financial documents or official confirmation, relying instead on pattern spotting and speculation. What made these stories powerful wasn't proof, but emotion. They tapped into a familiar arc: the rise, the peak, and the quiet fade. For many viewers, that storyline felt more relatable than spreadsheets and asset lists ever could. But the truth is, financial reality for public figures is rarely as simple as rich or broke. And to understand why these claims persist, you have to look at how people actually interpret the numbers behind fame. When a celebrity's net worth appears online, it often gets treated like a bank balance. A single, fixed amount that can be spent or lost overnight. In reality, it's closer to a moving target made up of many different pieces. Royalties from music and films can continue for years, sometimes decades, but they don't arrive as one large payout. They trickle in over time, rising and falling depending on where and how the work is used. Property values can shift with the market. Business interests can grow quietly or fade just as silently. What looks impressive on paper doesn't always translate into cash that can be accessed instantly. This gap between perception and reality is where a lot of confusion takes root. A person can be worth millions while still living simply or dealing with obligations that limit what's actually available day to day. Without public financial disclosures, outside observers are left to connect dots that may not even be related. Add in dramatic headlines and algorithm-driven content, and suddenly the most extreme interpretation becomes the one that spreads the fastest. Which raises an uncomfortable thought. Maybe the real story isn't about how much she had, but about how the story of her wealth was shaped after she was gone. In the days and weeks that followed, headlines and thumbnails didn't focus on her performances or her influence. They focused on numbers, mysteries, and unanswered questions. Online platforms rewarded the most dramatic versions of the story. A post suggesting secret millions or sudden poverty drew more attention than a quiet reminder that estates are private and complicated. Each new video, comment, or article didn't just report on the conversation. It pushed it further, adding another layer to the narrative. Before long, speculation started to feel like fact to some viewers. Repeated often enough, even unverified claims can take on the weight of truth. And in that environment, the original sources, or lack of them, faded into the background. What mattered was the story people wanted to believe. This isn't unique to Nora Aunor. It's a pattern seen whenever a public figure leaves behind unanswered questions. Mystery creates momentum, and momentum creates a kind of digital legacy that can be just as powerful as any official record. But behind all the theories and headlines, there's something that doesn't change. The body of work that first put her in the spotlight. And that brings the conversation back to what can actually be verified, rather than what simply feels compelling to repeat. Strip away the rumors, the viral posts, and the dramatic headlines, and what remains is a career that continues to carry real, measurable value. Nora Aunor's films still air on television and streaming platforms. Her music still generates royalties. Her name still draws attention in retrospectives, tributes, and cultural discussions. These are the parts of her legacy that don't depend on speculation. They exist in contracts, archives, and intellectual property that continue to move through the industry long after the cameras stop rolling. While the exact numbers behind those earnings stay private, the presence of her work in circulation shows that her influence didn't disappear with her. For her family and heirs, this kind of legacy isn't just symbolic. It can translate into ongoing income streams, controlled through rights management and licensing agreements that operate quietly in the background. No headlines, no public statements, just the steady continuation of what was built over decades. This perspective doesn't provide a dramatic answer to the question of how much, but it does offer something more grounded. A sense of what actually lasts when the online conversation moves on. And with that in mind, the final question isn't about whether she left behind millions or pennies. It's about how history will choose to remember what she left behind at all. It's about what people choose to carry forward from her story. Long after the figures fade from memory, the conversations around her life continue to surface in classrooms, film festivals, fan communities, and cultural retrospectives. Nora Aunor's name still opens doors in discussions about representation, artistry, and the power of rising from obscurity to national icon. That kind of impact can't be tracked on a balance sheet. It lives in the performances that get rediscovered by new generations, and in the influence she left on actors and musicians who followed in her footsteps. At the same time, the mystery surrounding her wealth has become part of the narrative itself. For some, it's a cautionary tale. For others, it's a reminder of how little the public truly knows about the private lives of people in the spotlight. The unanswered questions keep the story alive, even when official records remain silent. In the end, the numbers may never be fully confirmed. The rumors may never completely disappear. But the work she created, the moment she defined, and the space she carved out in entertainment history remain visible, tangible, and impossible to erase. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not what was counted, but what continues to be remembered. Still, for many fans, the unanswered questions linger just beneath the surface. The story of Nora Aunor's wealth has become a kind of open-ended puzzle, one that invites people to revisit her life through a different lens every time a new claim or theory appears online. Some return to old interviews, searching for hints about how she viewed success and money. Others rewatch her films, looking for moments that seem to reflect her personal journey beyond the screen. Even casual viewers find themselves pulled in by the contrast between her public triumphs and the private details that were never fully revealed. This cycle keeps the conversation alive. Each generation brings its own interpretations, shaped by the platforms and media of the time. What started as a simple question about finances has evolved into a broader reflection on fame, privacy, and how stories change once they leave the hands of the person who lived them. And in a way, that constant return to the mystery mirrors the lasting pull of her work itself. People don't just revisit Nora Aunor to find answers. They revisit her because her story, in all its clarity and uncertainty, still feels worth exploring. Which leaves one final thought hanging in the air. Maybe some questions are meant to stay open, not because they lack answers, but because they keep the story alive. In Nora Aunor's case, that curiosity has created a digital trail that stretches across forums, videos, archived interviews, and fan pages that continue to grow long after her last public appearance. Every new post or clip becomes another piece in a constantly shifting mosaic. Someone uncovers an old quote about her views on success. Another points to a forgotten project that hinted at future plans. Each detail, no matter how small, gets woven into a larger narrative about who she was beyond the spotlight and what she may have left behind. What's striking is how this process turns the audience into part of the story itself. Fans aren't just watching from the sidelines anymore. They're collecting, comparing, and sometimes challenging the information that circulates online. In doing so, they help shape the version of her legacy that will be passed down to those who never saw her rise firsthand. But the more voices that join the conversation, the harder it becomes to separate what's been verified from what's simply been repeated. And that brings the journey full circle. Back to the original mystery that sparked it all, and to the question of how much truth can survive once a story starts living on its own. And to the space between what can be confirmed and what continues to be debated. Nora Aunor's wealth, like so much of her private life, remains largely behind closed doors, shaped by legal processes, family decisions, and the natural limits of public access. What stands in the open, though, is the impact she left behind. Decades of performances, songs, and moments that still circulate across screens and speakers, reaching people who weren't even born when her career first took off. In a world driven by headlines and numbers, that kind of staying power tells its own story. one that doesn't need a final dollar amount to feel complete. The mystery may never be fully resolved, and the rumors may never entirely fade. But perhaps the more lasting takeaway is how a single life can spark conversations that continue long after the spotlight moves on. If you found this story worth exploring, take a moment to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future uploads and deep dives like this one.